All right, Kirk Baldridge, 74 to 80. I was 4.
I was
charters, what she said.
And we have a few more people joining us, but we'll go ahead and start. I'm going to introduce our moderator today. His name is Beckel. He is our local historian. He has written a book, if you didn't know, which we have over at the Annex. After this panel, please go over and visit the Annex. There's a great exhibit, lots of interactive activities. I've worked with Don for a long time. I've known Don and his family and his girls since we moved here in 1981. So he's worked so hard to put all this local history information together, and he's done so much good work for the city. So introduce you to Don Beckel.
Thank you. Megan?
Oh, turn on your mic.
Turn on my mic.
There you go.
Okay. Well, let's see here. I wanted to start out by doing some information that we researched from Dave Fox, what he said about the colony. I don't know how people sort themselves out. The residents of the colony could have purchased a house anywhere, but the cream came to the colony. They had self-confidence like the early pioneers who came together and worked out disagreements to form a new government and become a self-governing city. Ron Walden, one of his chief assistants, said, the people who moved to the colony were mostly younger, upwardly mobile families who were looking for a home they could afford in a good school district. They had confidence the colony would grow and provide a stable community environment to raise their families. The colony and its people are a reaffirmation that the American way is alive and well. It is a pleasure to welcome you today to today's panel discussion composed of some of those pioneers. To begin with, I would like to ask the panel members to introduce themselves, what year you moved to the colony, what street did you live on, and what brought you here, and what did the colony look like when you moved here. So, Martha, would you like to start?
Yes. My name is Martha Kimberling, and my family moved here in 1974 and stayed until 1980. We lived on Blair Oaks because it was close to the fire department. One of the reasons we moved here was because Fox and Jacobs wanted to have a working fire department for the people before they came out. And my husband had been on a volunteer department when we were in. So one day my husband said, Martha, I wish, I want to take you out and show you something. And I thought, oh, okay. So we took a drive all the way from Carrollton up Old Denton Road to 121 and headed east. And I thought, there's nothing out here. So we got to 423, took a left, and went down. And a little ways down, he said, this is going to be a city. And I said, it's going to be a what? Where are the kids going to school? And where do we buy groceries? And we found out. We bought a house out here, and my husband was the fire chief for 5 years.
Hi, I'm Bill Devlin. My wife, Ruth Ann, and I moved here in October of '75. And we came out here because the same house here was $10,000 less than the same house in Carrollton. So it was like a no-brainer. So quickly we became involved in the association of homeowners that were here, trying to form some type of organization that would support the growth of the colony. So fortunately, my wife ended up going to work for the municipal utility district, and I eventually became the second police officer hired by the city of the colony. And so through the years, we've seen a lot of growth, and very satisfied that a lot of hard work went into building this. I mean, you think about it, when do you ever get to start a brand new city all by itself? And most of us never get that opportunity. That's not a bucket list item that you can check off. So in our position, it was very satisfying. And we're proud of what the colony has turned into.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather Ervin Falco. I was 8 years old when I came to the colony in 1977. My dad transferred from Illinois as a financial printer, and our family moved to Dallas. And we ended up settling in Irving first, and then my dad found out that the colony was building a community and was just kind of getting started at the time. So, you know, they had the first houses on the ground in 74. We got here in 77. We lived on Arbor Glen, and we were building a house on Roberts at the time. And so that's kind of how we got to the colony, and I went to Kamey the very first year it was open. So that was kind of a proud moment to go to the first colony schools. And growing up here from, I guess, you know, starting from, like Martha said, basically out in a maize field, right? And a 2-lane 121 and a 2-lane Main Street 423. It's come a long way. I wish you guys could all see what we've seen. It's amazing where we've come. We're very proud of our city, and we look forward to the next 50 years.
Hello, I'm Joel Marks. I moved here in 1980, January of 1980, but in 1979 I came up here to visit a friend's house that was being built. And for $300, I wrote a check and bought a house. I lived on, and I've been in the same house for 44 years now, raised family and a bunch of grandkids and great-grandkids. And I'm a current city councilman for about a little over 30 years. It's been, in the 70s, things were just different. We used to come up here back before I moved up here and go to the Sturge Creek Park, throw a Frisbee, drink beer, barbecue, and it was just like a family place. And when I came up here and saw this place in July, I think it was, of '79, there weren't any schools yet. Everybody had to go to Louisville. There weren't any grocery stores. That stop and go that used to be where the smoke shop is now was the busiest stop and go in Texas because everybody got their bread and sugar and everything there. But yeah, we've come a long way, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of it. If there's something you don't like about it, there's 6 other council people here that you could blame. So just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, could you share with us what everyday life in the colony was like in the 1970s? What was your commute to work or school like? What did you do for fun? What were the most significant issues you encountered as an early resident of the colony?
Every day was get up, get the kids ready, and get them out to the bus stop, which they had never seen before, and were always used to going in the car. I didn't work at the time. I got a little upset one day when I looked at the Louisville Leader, and there was nothing in it about the colony. So I just went in there and said, could I speak to the editor? And so he talked to me, and I said, the colony's getting big, and we have news, and we're important. And so why don't you put somebody to give our news? And he said, well, I don't really have anybody. I don't know anybody from there. Do you have any news? And I thought, yeah, I guess I do. I know what's going on out there. So he said, well, if you'll write something, I'll put it in the paper. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. If he's crazy enough to just let somebody off the street write something and he'll print it. So I did. And when I took the paper in and he read it, he said, you have a job. And I'll show you how to do an inverted triangle when you're writing. And so that's how the Colony Leader started. So that was what I did every day for a good while.
Thank you. when my wife and I moved here, we had no children, so it was we were kind of the exception to the rule, and there was lots of kids, but we didn't have any, so we were about work. I was working, she was working. I was also going to University of North Texas State University. That's what it was called back then. Now it's North Texas University, I guess. So our situation was a little different. Joel mentioned about going to Louisville to do our grocery shopping. We started off going to Carrollton, going all the way down to Josie and Frankfurt, and we always carried a refrigerator bag with us, or a cooler, so you could put ice cream or butter or milk or whatever in it. And so it was a hike, and then eventually we started going to Louisville as well, to the Tom Thumb or Kroger in West Louisville. And so you had to be committed. You really truly felt a little bit like a pioneer, you know, and because you had to work at daily life here. It's not as easy as it would have been in a well-established city. But there was something great about it, because it was all about, we all shared in the responsibility. And I think that was the big issue, that there was not squabbles. I don't remember any squabbles at all in terms of the association of residents. It was people with one united thought, and that was, hey, how can we make our little community better? And that was what we did.
So I think my perspective will probably be a little bit different than everyone else's, because I was still a youngster at the time where everybody else was adults that's on the panel. So I think my experience, one of the early things I really remember is when somebody would ask you, well, where's the colony? And as an 8-year-old, you had to say, well, I understand it's between Louisville and Plano and north of Carrollton, right? And they're like, but there's nothing there but fields. And I'm like, well, you have to drive about a half a mile in, and then you're going to see like the stop and go, and then you're going to take a right into the community, and you'll see this big red barn, right? So that's how you defined where the colony was. You had to add landmarks to things, because if you tried to tell somebody, they were like, but that's just fields. And they were right. It was fields. And like everybody else has said, you know, we had to go to Carrollton. We had to go to Louisville. You know, we had our first school in 77 Kamey, but then between the next schools and the next levels being built, we had to go to Louisville, and then back to the colony and back to Louisville. So it was a lot of traveling, you know, but it was fun. To me, it felt like it was really safe as a child. You know, you could go out in the summertime, for example, and go out early in the day, and you knew to come home when the street lights were coming on, right? Because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have GPS, but we were adventurers as kids. We'd get on our bikes, we would ride over to the lake because we were taking trails because there was no roads on the west side. You know, so it was a lot of fun to just go out and adventure into the creeks, or, you know, just do all the fun stuff that we don't let our kids do now, right? So, but it was fun. We learned how to survive. We were latchkey kids, right? I don't know if anybody knows that term, but, you know, both of our parents worked. We were left alone a lot, so we became adventurous. We learned how to cook for ourselves. We did our own laundry. We had jobs. We babysat. We mowed lawns. You know, we did all the throw newspapers, right? You know, and we got to go to Larry's to go have lunch. We saved our money, and, you know, so it was fun as a kid. You know, it was real outdoors. You know, we were always outside. So I think I take away that as the early days, as it was just everybody knew everybody. Everybody was involved. There were block parties. You know, it was just a lot of fun. As a kid growing up, that's my fondest memories here.
So I was 4. No, I wasn't 4. So I was, let's see, I was in my 30s, I guess, when I got here. Yeah, because I've been here 44 years. So anyway, it was different. I was actually here in the early 80s, and, you know, 121 was 2 lanes, one each way. We didn't have a lot of traffic. We didn't have crazy drivers because nobody had a cell phone. And women were getting to work on time, didn't have to put their makeup on in the car. And, but I'll tell you what, the things that I do miss, we used to go to Piggly Wiggly in Louisville. And that was the coolest place. I don't know why. They had the different things. They were kind of like the Market Street of the time back then. And I always told my wife, I said, if you're going to go grocery shopping, can you wait till Saturday so I can go with you? But, you know, she would go more often. She was a hairdresser out here. She had a great, you know, life was great. Life is good now. We just have so many other things that are involved in our life that we just have to be careful, make the right choices and all. But, yeah, the streets were small. We had a great fire department. We had a great police department. We had great city management. You know, we are what we are because they were who they were, and they did great jobs in getting the city developed correctly.
Thank you. We had a question here for organizations. There was some mentioned those in some of the previous content or conversations here. Are there any other organizations that anyone would like to mention that they were involved in?
What did you say?
Organizations like,
Yes.
Martha, maybe could you say a little bit more about the fire department?
Well, I was just going to say that one of the organizations was the
Turn
fire.
your mic.
I'm not used to this. We had a fire department auxiliary, and it was awesome because they raised funds for the fire department. The fire department was not a city entity at the time, and so Fox and Jacobs had given us the trucks, and anything else we bought an ambulance later anyway. But I want to say that the fire department auxiliary was a super organization. I belonged to a sorority, and you can see I don't have a good memory left. Anyway, I can't remember the name of it, but it also raised funds for different organizations in the city, which was a good thing. And then there were also political groups. There were Democratic women, Republican women, anyway, the Lions Club and so forth. So yes, we had some group organizations from the very beginning.
As I mentioned before, there was in the homeowners association, within that, there was a law enforcement committee started by interested people, and I happened to be one of those that were interested. Honestly, I grew up in Pennsylvania. My dad was a Pennsylvania state trooper, so law enforcement was really kind of in my blood for all those years growing up. And I guess one of the biggest difficulties in starting this community was here we were, this little community, growing but still little. We're in the prairies of far southeastern Denton County, and we were unincorporated, so we had no authority to start a police department. So very quickly, issues came up that needed law enforcement attention, and it was difficult. We were really under the supervision or under the enforcement area of the Denton County Sheriff's Department. And one of the things that people moving here, and I will tell you that a vast number of people moving into the colony were not from Texas. These were people that were being transferred into the Dallas area. Dallas was growing like crazy. And so we had a lot of people that had life experiences elsewhere, not in Texas. And what was very hard for people to understand is that while we were important, certainly we felt we were important, in the scheme of things in Denton County is a county of over 900 square miles. And at that time, it was a rural county, as rural as you could get. after midnight, there was one sheriff's deputy working, and he was trying to cover 900 square miles. After midnight, there was no DPS troopers working any of the highways or anything like that. If there was a fatality accident, they had to call him out from home. He had to get dressed, wake up, get dressed, and get in his car and come to wherever he was needed. And so there was a lag in getting good law enforcement to us little city at this far end of the Denton County. And in one way it was bad because we really had to wait in line for service, but it was good in the other sense because it forced us into looking at incorporation, because that was the only way that we could legally begin our own police department, which helped us maybe control our community even more than what we could expect from the Denton County Sheriff's Department. So from that perspective, what turned out to be a negative probably in the end was a positive. And I was fortunate, myself and Nick Restagno, we were two of the first patrolmen hired by the city of the Colony. When I came out of the police academy in the spring of 1978, we had 2 police cars, both heavily used, and he got to work the daytime because he was hired a few months in front of me, and I got to work all night. So most people didn't see me because I was up working all night and he was up working all day. But that was the rudimentary beginning of what the Colony Police Department has now. And while I was grateful for them to send me through the police academy in August of '78, I left and went to Carrollton, and I spent the rest of my career in Carrollton. But Nick went on to serve as chief of police here for a number of years before he left and went to Lake Dallas, but as city manager, I think. So, but it was a tough beginning. It really was, and but it worked out. It was good.
So again, I think my perspective will be a little different when we talk about organizations. For the youngsters in the colony, I think the biggest things were, what are the kids going to do, right? What kind of organizations can we get together for the children? So sports was always a big thing, right? We had soccer. That was probably our biggest organization at the time. All the boys were on the soccer teams, and then we had baseball teams, softball teams, things like that early on. That was probably the biggest things we had. We had community. I know the Boy Scouts started organizations early in the city as well. But just trying to get kids together, get involved in getting the schools involved, getting coaches to coach these teams, to get people to have their children to have something to do besides just wander the streets and go out and adventure. That was fun too. But we did have structure. We had fun. And some of the early, I'm sure you'll probably see some of the early pictures of some of our kids and some of the soccer pictures, in the book that Don has wrote as well. It gives a little bit of the history of our early part of the city for the kids as well. So that was a good experience, all the kids getting to have different activities to do besides just all the adventures we were doing on our own. But it was a good time.
So I was involved in soccer association, softball association, coached, I umpired, I listened to people complaining about my calls behind me a lot. And I never kicked them out of the field because where were they going to go? Their kids were playing, they had to be there. So, but we made a lot of friends. Everybody was very resilient. It was a great, similar to what we have now. We just don't see each other as much that we used to. When we'd have organizations or groups get together, we knew everybody, unlike what we see now in the audience. And there's a lot of people that I don't know, but only because things are changed. But that's how you make a city, is everybody gets together on the same page and tries to get things done accordingly. Oh, and I meant to tell you earlier, when I first moved in here, in 1980, January of 1980, I used to open up my back door. My house is over near Fire Station number 2. I opened up my back door because it snowed one night. I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I thought snow was pretty cool. So I walked out there to look to see what it was, and there was tracks in the snow, probably wolves or coyotes or whatever. But I could see Highway 121 from my back door because there was nothing. It was still a field. So, at any rate, the organizations worked out fine. The city was very helpful in helping us put softball fields together and soccer fields together, and we've seen a lot of growth, and we're to the point now where, you know, we're doing things completely different as we grow, and it's for the betterment of the community. And I know I'm not running for re-election or anything, but it sure sounds like it. In a couple of years, you may see me do that.
Thank you. In the early years of the colony, there were several well-known and/or infamous houses in the colony. The Greenhouse, the Pink House, the Kreider Road House, and probably the most famous is the Purple House. Does anyone have any comments on any of these houses?
I never went to
Pleading the fifth.
but my father did, and it was business. He worked for from our engineering that did all the plumbing, heating, and air conditioning for the colony. So the gentleman at the Purple House had a plumbing problem, and he called Mr. Fox and said, "I have a plumbing problem," and gave his address, which Mr. Fox recognized by not being a part of the colony anyway. And he said, "Well, we don't normally do that." And he said, "Well, I think it might be to your advantage." I don't think he really meant to threaten Mr. Fox. But anyway, my dad had to go there and fix the plumbing problem. And he really didn't have anything much to say about it, just that he was glad to get out of there when the job was done.
I mentioned this earlier, but the stories about the Purple House have, how can I say this, probably greatly exaggerated. It really was not. I think if it would have been a brown house, it would have just been the brown house and no big deal. But it was because it was purple, and it really didn't start off being purple. They painted it purple at some point. But the reality is there was a kind of a nefarious character that owned the property, and he was well known to law enforcement, not just to the colony, but other law enforcement agencies. And on one particular moment in history, the FBI decided that one of the 10 most wanted was hiding out in that house. And they came out with all of their equipment and surrounded the place and had sharpshooters and everything. And in reality, he wasn't there. And so I think that just kind of added to the notoriousness of that house. And in actuality, you know, the time that I spent here and the time that Nick spent here in law enforcement, we never had any problems from there at all. It was just a house that everyone pointed at and said, "It's the Purple House," you know, but it really wasn't what everyone thought it was.
They kept their business quiet.
They did. And in all honesty, this particular area of Denton County, as I said before, was in the fringe area, the far southeast part of the county. And between Louisville and McKinney, all along 121, there was one massage house after another along the road. And so if there was some nefarious action going on there, it was just in line and step with what was going on all the way up and down 121. And through time, when land values became much more valuable, those properties were quickly sold off. It didn't last long. But if you needed a massage for your, this was the area to come to.
The fire department did make 2 or 3 fires at some of those places along the highway. So,
They were a hot time in the old town, right?
yeah.
Well, I will tell you from my perspective as a child what my parents told me. So the Purple House in perspective, I'll kind of give you an idea. If you know where Dunkin' Donuts is and Angelina's is, right? So that was the side of the road the Purple House was on. And it was very bright, purple. It had a fenced-in property, also had big dogs running the property. There were limos that would come in and out of the property. And I remember asking my parents, I'm like, well, what goes on at that house? Why are they have all these fancy cars and all these fancy people? Because sometimes you'd see them getting in and out of the cars, and the women were all dressed really fancy. And I'm like, well, what are they doing here? And my dad just told me that was the house of ill repute. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant, right? So again, we talk about the hot tub clubs, the massage parlors that were down 121. You know, as a child, I didn't really take that into understanding, I guess. It was just more of a, well, that's where the fancy people are, and they're coming and going all hours of the day and night, and they got people driving them around and those kind of things. So to me, I really didn't have an understanding, but I think everybody's perspective, depending on your age and how long you'd been here, what you thought versus maybe what, like he said, was maybe really true, right? It was, you know how rumors are, the things start here to be one thing and the next thing you know, it's blown out of proportion. So it could be a little of both maybe there. So my perspective was it was just a really funny looking colored house, and all the comings and goings is, you know, it was normal, but it came down to what it was, and it got torn down, and we went on with our history, and Angelina's is basically in that area now, so there we are.
So the folklore is, you know, pretty redundant. Everybody talked about the Purple House. I never noticed anything different. You know, it was just the Purple House. I never heard any stories about it, but I can tell you this. I think I may have been on city council when this happened, or in the 80s. The Purple House was abandoned, and we were going to go in it. I said somebody, and there was a bunch of guys that went there, and I think some of the city council people at the time, and the police and everything. Everybody was going to go in, and I think everybody was very disappointed when they got out of it. But the most important part of the road, on our notes here, it says Kreider Road also. I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but there used to be a street, nice, big, southern-looking house on Kreider Road where they filmed Walker, Texas. And eventually it burned down, and I don't know if that was part of the filming or not, but yeah, we were known for that. We would see people like him in town sometimes. There was a gentleman that lived, from the guy who did commercials for Sears with the beard, and he was on another TV show. At any rate, he lived in the colony. We would see him, and he would always talk about Walker, Texas every time I'd run into him at Walmart. But yeah, I don't think it matters what color the house is. They're all about the same.
I will tag on about the Kreider House. A lot of people probably don't realize too, the Kreider House sat on land. It was owned by the Morgan family, but they had received the property from the Griffin family. And the Griffin family, you might recognize the name, Griffin Middle School. The Griffin family owned a lot of land in this area way back in late 1800s, right? So we're talking they were some of the early settlers, early pioneers that come through here. The Griffin family did. They owned all the way from Hebron, over kind of like where Hebron High School is, all the way over to where Kreider Road was. Kreider Road, I guess I'll give you an example where that was, you know, where the big Kroger is on 121, right? all through Castle Hills, we had this road, and it was a fun road, right? It was kind of a dirt road, gravel road, and it was blacktopped, and you get to go down the hill, and then you made the S-curve, and sometimes you made it, and sometimes you didn't. So if you were in the wrong person's car and you didn't make it, it wasn't good. A few of us had accidents out there, but it was a fun road, but it was talked about a lot, like Texas Walker Ranger did filming out there. A lot of people thought the house was haunted. You know, a lot of talk about the house. It was a beautiful home. It was cotton farming land back in the day. So it was very famous for that era, but it was really a great home, and it was really a tragic loss to our community because it was something as kids we like to talk about. So it was a good memory.
It was a Civil War era home.
Yes, Civil War era home. So, I mean, we do have pictures. There's some over in the annex building. They're definitely in Don's book, too, so he does talk about these homes. The pink house was our city hall that sat kind of where Dental Depot is up on the hill back by Big Lots. That was what we called the pink house. So there's a lot of fun names we gave to the houses out here during the day because they were landmarks, right? So if you didn't know what it was called, we just said, oh, it was the pink house or the purple house or the white house or so whatever. But, yeah, we all had a good time.
Thank you. The colony is sometimes described as a unique city because it began as an F&J residential development. Does anyone have any comment concerning the working relationship between Fox and Jacobs and residents and/or the city after it incorporated?
I'll just say this, Fox and Jacobs birthed this city, or birthed the development, and didn't abandon us. In the early days, when trying to get us started off in some level of organization and trying to develop the future for this city, Fox and Jacobs stayed with us. As Martha mentioned, they donated that piece of equipment out there and other equipment. They offered their legal services in terms of getting us incorporated as well. And so I always felt that Fox and Jacobs was hand in hand with what we were doing out here at the time. I think you probably feel the same way. Perryman Park, he was our liaison with Fox and Jacobs, and what a terrific young man he was. Chuck passed away from illness, but he really laid his hands on developing this community and was an integral part. He took a personal interest in the future of this city. So that's why there's a park named after him.
You know, I think when you start a city, you don't realize all the things that go into a city. And like they're talking about with Fox and Jacobs, when you get ready to incorporate, you know, that means a lot of things. You have to have shopping, you have to have postal service, you have to have a fire department, you have to have a police department, right? So you have to have infrastructure. You need city lights, city stop signs, lighting in the community so people can see in the residential areas, parks, schools, entertainment, anything from ball fields, right? So when you're building a city, I think Fox and Jacobs was working really hand in hand with the community concerns and the community wants and the community needs. I think they did a very good job in incorporating, you know, everything that was taken to them for our growth, so we could not just become a city that was known as just a community. We became a city, and a city by the lake, and we became a very well-known city. I think we got everything we needed pretty early on, and we've built on that today, as you can see, Grandscape, right? So we've brought so much into the city that Fox and Jacobs gave us the opportunities to actually bring here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be what we are today if we didn't have a good relationship with Fox and Jacobs initially. And I can remember being on the soccer association, we were always, and softball association, we were always losing our fields because of development of schools and other things. But Fox and Jacobs was there and helped us. Where North Point is now, Turner and Taylor Street, all those houses back there, they gave us that land temporarily until before they started building North Point, so we could put soccer fields there when we lost our other soccer fields. So, yeah, thanks to them, they did a great job. Their vision continued even after they were all gone.
Speaking of sports fields, Joel, I know you had a lot of personal experience on where the fields were. Can you kind of tell us how they the development stages for all of that?
So we used to play softball on the fields where McDonald's was, behind there. There was an old home back in the day. The home wasn't there. There used to be but you could see where there was a swimming pool that they filled in, and then we used to play softball there. And we lost that field, and I believe we went to where the high school is now. Oh, actually, we played it behind Kamey too, but we needed more. We had more people. We needed more fields. So the land that the high school is on now, they decided to give that to the softball association. And you talk about one of the questions about what your schedule was and everything. Well, we'd all get home, and everybody in our organization would drop everything at home and run out to the fields, and we get our wheelbarrows and our shovels, and we built a new softball field. And we were so proud of it. We had a great time there. And then the school district bought the land and wanted to build a high school there. So we ended up with no softball. Then I got involved in men's soccer. I started running a men's soccer team. And then they built out at B.B. Owens. So they built the two fields, the city did. And I was on the Parks and Rec at the time. And they said, hey, we need to probably fill in that pond because we need another field. And I said, no, we need that pond there for the wildlife because, that's what it's there for. And then I asked them, they decided, okay, we'll keep the pond, and I asked them to name it after me, but that didn't happen. True story.
You see on the logo here that our logo is City by the Lake. What role, if any, did Lake Louisville play in the life of the colony in those early years?
Well, at one point, we had two boats at Pier 121, and it was wonderful to come home from work and hop in the car, and 15 minutes later, you're on the lake. It's a beautiful lake. It created a reason for people to come here, and that was important for the growth of the city. I mean, it really was important. I mean, this lake became more and more popular as the North Dallas area developed and the suburbs developed. It just became more and more popular. It was the biggest lake close in. And so I think being by the lake clearly helped us grow quicker and better. So, but yeah, we were definitely part of the lake and enjoyed the lake and did plenty of crappie fishing there, and it's part of the fun things we get to do out here.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would say from my perspective, being a youngster, I guess at the time, is a lot of kids could get on their bikes. We would take an adventure. We'd go out to the lake. Sometimes you take your fishing pole. Sometimes you just wear your bathing suit, So wherever you ended up, it was kind of a day thing. We're going to the lake today because it wasn't an easy thing to get to, So you got on your bike and you did the trails and you took your pole or went swimming and you took your lunch and you just spent the day there, right? And you came home, and that was kind of an adventure for us. So I think it was a good thing. I agree that it really drew people to the colony because it was entertainment, right? I mean, there wasn't, like we said, a lot out here, but people had boats, and it seemed like it was a lot safer lake probably then than it is now. But it was definitely fun. I know my dad, he had a boat, we'd go out on the weekend and we'd go catch our limit and come back home and we'd have a neighborhood fish fry. So, that was the fun thing about it too. It was community, the whole neighborhood, bunch of the people would get together and you'd make a party or whatever out of the day at the lake, so it was really a lot of fun back then.
And we, back in the day, we were very fortunate to be able to, very unfortunate we couldn't go on vacations like a lot of our friends did. We just didn't have the money, so we would go out to Sturge Creek Park and take a tent, and I'd take a water hose, and we found a spigot, and I'd throw the water hose over the tree, and that would be our shower, and we did a staycation there. We did it several times, and the kids just loved it because their friends would come out, and they would say, well, why can't our parents come out here? I said, no, I don't know. You just ask them, But it was very nice. And by the way, I just thought of a little bit of a history. This logo was designed by, I think it was designed by a gentleman by the name of Gary Garrett. Very, very artistic when we moved away from that logo. Anyway, and if you want to fact check that, you can call the Republicans.
I guess some of us have probably hinted at this a little bit, but what do you think is the most surprising change or how the colony developed from what you would have thought back in the 70s?
I never saw the traffic being like, I mean, I come through Dallas to come up here, and we have traffic in our little town too, but I have I've never seen anything like it here. It's big traffic.
I mean, who would have thought at one point the tallest building in the world was planned for the colony, Who would have thought that? No, I mean, I think Grandscape is a great example, and the spread of territory that the colony political leaders were smart enough to understand, hey, we've got to expand beyond this little postage stamp that we're in right now, and fortunately we're able to incorporate land that gave us a place to grow to, and made us very comfortable living next to North Dallas and Carrollton and Plano and even Frisco. Now, many may not know that this place would have, the colony would have never existed had Frisco not given up their extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's a legal terminology that basically the land that we are sitting on right now was within the Frisco jurisdiction. But part of the law that came with that required Frisco to provide all the city services necessary to sustain a city. And they couldn't do it at the time. At the time, back in the early 70s, Frisco was basically Main Street in Frisco. It's a beautiful, shining city now, but back then it was a very small country town in Collin County. And so they were forced to give up their extraterritorial jurisdiction in order for the colony to incorporate. And so a lot of people don't know that, but we could have just as easily been a part of Frisco had they made the effort to provide the services.
I agree on all that as well. What the colony is today, I never envisioned seeing what it is. We were in a field in the middle of nowhere, and now we are a huge city in the middle of somewhere, right? So Grandscape, I can't imagine if we'd have had Grandscape back in the day, what we would have been able to do for adventures, right? But I think the traffic, I think nobody ever expected to have a tollway, the Sam Rayburn, running through our city. The Dallas North Tollway was never expected to be what it was as well. Preston Road was a 2-lane road, just like 121 and 423, and we really were out in the middle of nowhere. Downtown Frisco was downtown Old Frisco. It was a half a day venture, just I'm going to town, right? It was a real thing. So today we can stay within our own city. We can go to dinner. We can go to movies. We can go to music events. There are so many things that we can do here now that I don't think any of us ever envisioned back in the 70s, especially, that was ever going to be here. It makes me proud of our community, the growth that we have. We've got shopping. We've got everything. We really don't have to leave the colony, but we do. But we spend our money here. We live here. And I think we enjoy it, and we don't take it for granted. I think the people that have been here a long time, I think we really, really appreciate where we've started from and where we came from and where we're still going. I think there's still so much potential of what our city is still going to do, and I hope that our community will come together. And, if you have ideas, bring them to the city. We would like to see what and hear what you think should be here next. I think that's how we started, right? We came together as an early community to say what we needed and what we wanted, and we want people to stay here. So we still want the community involvement.
So I guess the biggest surprise that I hear is people can't believe that we, just the colony, have Grandscape. I mean, that development is just unbelievable. And I can tell you this, it was between Frisco and the colony to get Grandscape. And luckily, we had 121 because there was no way that you could put Grandscape. I believe that Frisco had offered Grandscape the land that the Star is on, and there's just no way with just the Dallas North Tollway that you could build something that big. And then we have 121 here, and this is what it's all about. And we have a great management team that helped bring this to the colony, and we have a lot more that's coming to the colony. That everybody, you're going to be surprised again and again and again.
I think that kind of covers most of the questions that we had kind of talked about. We got a couple minutes left here. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to address to someone in the panel?
I mean, I don't have anything, I don't have a question, but I would like to say, because I'm very proud of it, I was the very first girl in an all-boys soccer team here in the college.
There's only one thing I think I would like to add. I think today having our event at the cemetery from 9 to 11 o'clock really opened up a lot of people's eyes to, we just didn't start with Fox and Jacobs. We started as an early settlement in Texas. If it wasn't for the Peters Colony land grant, everything that's here now would not be here. The Republic of Texas granted 640 acres to a family, 320 acres to single men to come to this location to start the Republic of Texas and to bring people from all over the Midwest, like we talked about today, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, all of the Midwest, and people came here because they were given a reason to come, right? So I think what I want to leave us with today is we have a history. I don't want to see us lose our history. I think we have to keep teaching history. We need to let people know we have an early settlement here that we're very proud of. Very proud of the Bridges family for taking the faith to coming here and starting this community, and for Fox and Jacobs taking it to something even greater than what it was then. But I think we need to remember the people who came here first and give them thank you for helping us be where we are today.
I was going to say, if anything here today piqued your interest, Don did write a book. He's worked a long time on it. I was the local history liaison starting in 2007. And he wrote a shorter book about the early history, but I know he's been working on this book for quite a few years, so it's really a proud moment to have that published. We have that over in the annex. A lot of what was brought up today is in that book with a little bit more explanation. There's a lot of great photos, actually some that Martha took when she was the field reporter and correspondent for the Leader and then the Courier. We have lots of great photos that the city had. So we have lots of photos from 74 to 79 of the development of our city. We have some interactive activities, green screen photo booth, refreshments, the CVB, if you are from the colony and just coming to visit again after a long time, we have lots of information on what there is to do in the colony now, give you some ideas for what you might want to do tonight, go out to dinner, visit areas you may not have seen before. The library is over there also, so we really encourage you to just go over to the annex. A lot of what we talked about today is going to be in the pictures that you see, and Dawn will be over there. Dawn and Heather are part of our local history committee. They have a table that you can ask them questions. Our friends are going to be there. So thank you very much for coming today. And please also, the general out here, like we were talking about, when Fox and Jacobs started and to be released from the extraterritorial jurisdiction from Frisco, had to sign an agreement that they would build the firehouse, provide 2 fire engines, all these other things. So this is one of the original fire engines that they provided. They bought it from the Dallas Fire Department. It was used 21 years in Dallas, and it was built in 1952. It is nicknamed the General. We have it out here today till about 5 p.m. if you want to look. We have all kinds of photos of through the years of the General. He's in most of our parades. So lots of pictures there. Go ahead and take your picture with it and then head over to the annex, and we will be at the annex till 4 o'clock. So thank you for coming today.